This computer. Hello, I am Sama Morningstar, feminine embodiment queen and womb healing specialist, and I have with me here today Polly Hearsey, who I've had the pleasure to work with and share some of my womb healing coaching sessions with, and she agreed today to share with you what that experience was like. So how you doing, Polly?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, good. So I just wanted to ask you a few questions about your experience working with me so you can share with my audience what that was like for you so they can get a better idea about that. So first of all, what made you initially decide to do to receive some healing and coaching sessions with me?
For me, it was that a knowing in myself that I needed to work on my divine feminine balance, that I have always been ostensibly imbalanced and ostensibly more masculine than feminine. And for me, so it was knowing that I needed to address that and work with my own resistances to addressing that. And because we knew each other and because we had that connection, I knew that I could connect with you on that level and understand, and I knew that you would work with me in a gentle way to help me bring that to the fore. And that was, for me, that was the intention and the need that drove how I wanted to work with you. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yes. And so could you share more in detail how that imbalance of being in more having your masculine energies more developed and maybe your feminine energies more in the background or out of balance in some way? Could you share more specifically how that was affecting your life and what difficulties you were noticing and how that resistance to addressing that showed up for you in your life and experiences?
Well, the resistance was quite easy because the resistance is about, is always for me, is about dropping back into my head and analysing and controlling. I hope you can't hear that. Controlling you're just basically seeking to control. So and to have to know how everything was going to pan out, but all the time bubbling underneath that, very strong intuition, very strong inner knowing that I've been stuffing down. And we certainly talked about how I'd been stuffing that down for some time and keeping it under the surface. And yet, as we all know now, is a time when the divine feminine is just on the rise, and that it's just not an option. And for me, if I had just allowed that to come through without support, I think it would have. I just went a little bit wobbly anyway. But I think if I'd done it without support, I would have completely lost my balance and lost my way to go forward. So working with you was actually really helpful to me to be able to do it in a very not contained way. That's not quite the right word, but it was a way of understanding what was going on. And so where it was sort of like the imbalance was coming through for me was not trusting that knowing, was not trusting that sensation that I was coming through.
Can you give an example of like a scenario in your life where, this happened and then this happened and that knowing came through and you decided not to follow it, and then this happened and that kept making you feel, every time those kinds of things happen, made you realize? Can you give us a specific example so that women who aren't necessarily familiar with these personal growth terms can relate to it and say, Oh yeah, I've had that feeling in my life before.
Um, I'm just trying to think of one, which is where it's just, it keeps it. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I can give a specific, but what often would happen is that I would know, I would just intuitively know something, or, you know, it might be that I needed to do something or that I needed to address something, but my head, my ego would just come in and just say, no, actually, you need to be doing this, or you need to be doing that. So if you take something like self-care, which is, you know, is really important, my head would override that. I said, no, you can't stop now. You've got to do this. You've got to keep on doing this. And one of the things that you really taught me was that it was about how your body talks to you, and learning to stop and listen to my body. So I was actually, and that's something that happened so subtly that I didn't necessarily notice that I was doing it, but it's starting to go, oh, okay. Now I was hearing what my body was saying to me and what it meant. So, for example, actually, I have got an example. So, for example, my back went. Now, I've had, you know, problems with my shoulders, giving me back problems. So it would start at the bottom and then work up the top, or it would start at the top and work down. But recently, I've had a couple of instances where my lower back has just gone, absolutely without warning. There was no niggles, nothing, and that, you know, that was my body shouting at me quite loudly to pay some attention. But it was interesting that I was able to fix that. You know, literally, this was my knees went out from underneath me just walking across the kitchen. It was that bad, but within 24 hours, it was gone, because I was able to acknowledge it and process the emotions and work out where the pain, not just the physical pain, but the emotional pain and the emotional blockage was, by just actually taking that time to say, switch off brain, let's listen to what my body has to say and listen to what I intuitively know to be the case. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. That's a beautiful example. I can even relate to that one. I've had that experience myself. That very specific experience. So thank you so much for finding that for us. So could you share a little bit more specifically how, well, you have shared how my support helped you overcome some of these just by simply reminding you and supporting you, and before you knew it, you're actually listening to your body and able to drop out of your head and find the place of connection. So how has that improved your relationships, your professional life? How has that created those types of results for you?
Well, the relationship it's improved that's had the biggest impact on is my relationship with myself, which is
well, of course.
but because as I've become more aware, I've become more aware of when I'm not acting necessarily in the way that I want to, and I am. Well, I might have been aware before, but I didn't necessarily have the tools to sort of say, and step back from that and allow yourself to rebalance and regroup, and know that that's what the problem is. Whereas before, things could become a little bit of a runaway train, and I would have to get to a certain point where before I would get to be able to pull myself back and take that breath. Now I can see it coming, and I step back and take that breath.
Beautiful. And so then when that runaway train would happen, I'm imagining that might have difficult effects on your relationships, even with other people, if you let that runaway train go too far.
Oh, yeah.
Have you noticed a difference in that arena? Not only, you know, your close ones, but your professional relationships as well, that that are you?
Oh, no, that's interesting. Professionally, I am very much more aware now of when I am. Now, I always now when I'm reacting to something, I'm just, you know, particularly if I'm reacting negatively to something, I've been triggered by something, or it's just provoked a negative reaction in me somehow. I'm like, stop. You know, instead of, whereas before I might have just decided to get really cross about it. Now I'm like, there's a reason I'm being, you know, I'm feeling this way, so I need to actually stop and look at it. So it's actually just made me more self-aware of those relationships, which means I'm able to accept people on a different level, and also not necessarily accept them, but I'm able to see things in a different way, because that filter that you have in place otherwise is been removed. So you're actually able to say, no, take the me out of it, and I can look and see it as it is, as the situation is, if that makes sense. So from a professional point of view, it's just being able to, for me, it's made me able to just engage on a much more I'm just trying to think of the word, compassionate level.
So you're able, as you're more aware of, it sounds like as you're more aware of your own feelings and what's going on inside of you, and you're more compassionate with yourself and giving yourself the time to really be with your feelings, then you're more available to also connect with and feel the feelings of your clients and see what's really going on with them.
Yeah, that's a much better way of putting it.
Well, part of what I wanted to hear is how you would describe it, given where you're coming from, because somebody who's more in your shoes, or more, you know, with the similar difficulties, might be able to hear the way you say it, or understand the way you say it better than they're able to understand the way I say it. So I wanted to have us both saying it, you know, so we can see what that meant for people. Beautiful. So is there any other things that you would like to share? You know, we haven't really mentioned the womb much, and my work is very focused on the womb, and I would love it if you could share about how that womb awareness has played a part in this transformation for you.
I think the biggest thing for me, because I was out of balance, I wasn't necessarily accepting of my womb, and I certainly didn't listen to it. So it was, you know, something I put to one side. So now it feels very much a part of me. It feels part of the flow. So the last thing that we did, which is about planting seeds, has really stuck with me in terms of really understanding the role of the womb in that creativity process, and bringing that inspiration, and allowing it to grow, and bringing it out into the world. So it's really stuck with me, not just, you know, just as an analogy, but also as an actual sort of like an energetic level. That's really sticking with me. So whilst we didn't talk a huge amount about the womb, but it was implicit the whole way through everything that we did, and that understanding of that energy. And for me, you were always 2 steps at least ahead of me, and taking me where I needed to go before so you guided me there, where even when, because as we talked, you know, I was quite often resistant, and I knew I was resistant, so I was working through it, but you were taking me to where I needed to go in a really comfortable way, so that I never felt like getting up and running out of the room screaming or anything like that. It was just a natural progression for me to go where you were taking me. And because of that, because it felt so comfortable, that's how I was able to sort of like really integrate what you were talking about, and integrate it without necessarily realizing that I was doing that. That is the bit on reflection for me that I just hadn't taken on board how much I had taken it on board and integrated it into my daily life. So,
well, and that's the interesting thing, because we think when we are imagining that this learning that we need to do that is so outside of the realm of what our minds are capable of, in fact, not really the job for the mind. It's this huge thing that we're never going to be able to do, but that we're supposed to be doing with our mind, because that's what we've been trained to believe. And so that's where a lot of that resistance comes from, is like, there's no way I can do that. I'm not capable of doing that. I'm not even going to try because I'm just going to fail. Well, you know what? You're right. That mind is not the tool for the job. It's the wrong tool for the job. It doesn't have the skills. And so what I was training you, what I shared with you, is the experience of allowing other parts of you to engage that are the right tools for the job, like the womb. The womb is much more skilled and agile and able to do the creative process than the mind is. The mind can imagine all kinds of things, but it can't bring it into material form. So together they can work. And so there's whole sections that are happening without you even knowing or thinking about it, because it's not your thoughts that are doing it, right? And so that's beautiful, just the way you said it. Wow, it just kind of sneaks up on you. And that's my experience too with this womb awareness, is like, oh, that stuff I thought was totally impossible is just happening effortlessly and sneakily without me even knowing what's going on. And boom, there it is, And what a delight. So wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. So is there any last things you wanted to share about?
Not at the moment, but I have a sneaking suspicion that you give me another 3 months' time and I'll be like, that comes in again, and I'll have more stories to share, because what you've done with me it's not going anywhere. It's not a one-time thing, but what we went through is stuff that I will always use. It will always be there. It'll always be informing what I do. And I know that I'll be continuing to build on it now. And I have the acceptance to continue to build on it, which is great. It's absolutely wonderful.
That is wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. I'm so glad that you feel that foundation in place in a solid way for you. Lovely. All right. Well, good. Well, thank you, viewers, for taking the time to hear Polly's story and to consider how womb awakening and womb healing might serve you. And if you're interested in joining me for a womb healing session, I would love to talk with you about that. You can sign up for a womb listening initiation on my website at samamorningstar.com/book online. So that's the page that you go to sign up for your womb listening initiation. And we can talk about how you can also benefit from womb awakening. All right. Talk to you soon. Until next time.